Okay, well, hi everybody. It's December. It's almost Christmas. Today is December 13th. It's been a while, I think a couple months since I did one of these demos on YouTube. So I'm going to try to post more in 2022. But here I am. I'm going to be at my home today. It's kind of cold and rainy outside. I got my sweater on and I'm going to be ready to repaint a painting and describe why I'm making the changes. Repaint one of my students' paintings, so which I have been doing on YouTube. And you can see some of the previous things on my YouTube. And so if you go to it, subscribe so you can get updates as I do these. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to get a board up that I'm going to work on. And I use a program that's called ArtRage. And ArtRage allows me to put a layer on a painting of, this is what I do on Mondays. I have long distance learning with my students. I have 12 students on Monday, 12 students on Tuesday. We still, for your information, we still have a couple spots available for January. But so what I do is I enlarge this painting. This is one of my students that is very, very, very good student. And I'm just, repainting the painting and giving him some suggestions on how to maybe make this a little bit sunnier and more uniform. Okay, so let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a layer and I'm going to use these. This is my custom palette. I'm going to repaint this painting. I'm going to simplify it a little bit because that first step is really important in terms of simplifying everything and getting those big basic shapes. Okay, so let's start. I'll start with maybe the roof. I'm going to make the roof a little bit warmer than it is now. Add a little bit of orange to it. So we really put that, it's a little bit lighter. So we really put, that's a dark light, that roof. So I'm going to really try to put it just a little bit. I mean, he had the right idea, but I'm going to make it a little bit warmer. Okay. So I've got this light part here. Okay. And I'm going to fill in all the white spaces too, so it can make sure that this reads better. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm organizing lights and shadows. So even dark lights are going to be lighter than my lighter lights, which would be, this house is a lighter light. It's, if you compare these two, this to the background trees, this is a lighter shade, shadow color. But if you compare this to the roof, this roof is lighter than the shadow note. So anyway, so let's get to I think I'm going to put a lighter color there. And I think he's got a good idea. It is purple, but I think it's a little bit too dark. It's like a white, what I say is a white and shadow. I mean, this is like a little bit yellow, but a white and shadow is darker than a black and sunlight. Okay, so I'm going to just put this in. As a big note, I'm not getting into any of the detail yet. Okay, so this, and then it goes back here. I'm going to modify it later on. But right now, even though I see that it's a little bit darker in this corner here, I'm not making those changes yet. I'll do that later on. I'm just right now organizing lights and shadows as simple as possible. Okay, so I think that's all of the, and then there's a light here too. There's a shadow here, and there's a shadow here. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the, let's see, let me go back. So the roof and shadow, see how dark that this is compared to this? So that's a dark light. So, and it's cool. It's got blue in it. So I'm going to come in with that shadow note like right here. And then I've got a little bit of that in light here. Okay, so that's the light and the shadow. Okay, so now I'm going to pick a color for the, I'm not getting into windows and doors yet. That comes later. Now I'm going to get into the color of the house. And I'm going to make it a little bit of a, maybe that's a little bit too light. It goes towards the red because part of this is I wanted to separate from the light. The grass is going to be very yellow, so I'm going to a little bit of a pink color, so it separates better from the from like the grass or the trees. Okay, so everything in light. Okay, we got this here. And I'm ignoring all the windows and doors. I can put those in later on. Because I'm trying to get the bigger notes to read. I can always do doors and windows. And then it comes here, goes back here, then it's here. It comes all the way down here. Okay, you don't even see the side of that house. Okay, so that's a very quick. Okay, so now I'm, oh, and then here in the forefront, in the front. There's also white trim, which I'm going to deal with differently than this, the face of this house. Okay, so now I'm going to look at, if you look at this porch is much darker than this shadow here because this is getting less light and it's getting some warmer light. It's a little bit warmer than the this color right here. So I'm going to just go in there. Oops. As soon as I pick a color, and really maybe even darker than that. So I really have a dark color to indicate that that porch is in shadow. And there's got some green in it, which I can put in later on. Okay, so now I'm going to go to that roof is a dark light. And it's a little bit redder than the roof. It's a little bit darker and a little bit redder than the other roof. The top roof, it has more green. This has a little bit of red to it. And I can, as I'm working on this, I can change my drawing, correct my drawing and things like that. Okay, so a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna get this a little bit straighter here. Okay. So now I'm going to put in some of the white. So I'm going to go to a bluer. It's going to have less red in it. So this is a shadow part. Well, actually, I'm going to try this blue. Okay. So a white and shadow is some kind of, even Henchy said it's some kind of blue, but there's lots of different blues. So it could be a lot of different. So that's in shadow. And we got a little bit of a shadow underneath here. And then we've got a shadow here. And that's in light. We've got a shadow here, and we've got a shadow here that's in light. This is the white. and then I can always come in and correct these. Okay. So then it looks like, actually it looks like that whole thing is in shadow. So I'm going to really just put this whole back, and then it comes in here, and then there's a little bit of light from the building, from that right here. It gets light here. Okay. So now I'm going to paint some of the white and light. That's going to be your lightest light. It's a little bit lighter than this, the face of the building here. Okay, so then we've got this, whoops, it's hard for me to make straight lines. I'll come in and correct it. This is in light here, these posts. There's a light here, and there's a light here, light here. Okay. Then I can always go back and forth and correct. Okay, so I'm really trying to see just simple divisions. So I can see if I've got the right color, if I'm, you know, it's like this, at this point, this should really read as very simple color notes. This comes up here. Okay, so now, let's see, let me just correct a few things here, okay? So this comes here, and then there's a shadow underneath here that's a little bit warmer. I can warm it later on. And then there's some light, a white and light here. Okay, now I'm going to go to, this is in shadow. The back part here, the roof is a little, you see a little bit of it in shadow here. And then the other part is in light, and it's pretty thin. So there's probably a light here. Make this a little bit darker, a little bit. And then there's a light right over here. Okay. So that's the house. That's how I would start breaking the house up. Now I'm going to go to the foreground bush, and that's a more intense orange, I see. You know, compared to maybe this color here, this is, and later on, it doesn't have to be this orange, but it's got some yellow in it, but I'm going to break it up into a light and a shadow note. Then this is a shadow here, and it gets a little bit darker, like right here, in here, and then there's a shadow on the lawn. The bush is casting a shadow on the lawn. So there's a shadow here, and there's a shadow here. And then there's a shadow like right here from this other bush. Okay, so now I'm going to get to the light part of the okay, so there's a little bit of grass back here. It's too light. There's a little bit of grass back here. It's still too light. Okay, so grass here, and then all of this is in light. Make this bigger. Okay. So all of this is, I got it a little bit darker. Right in the middle there. Okay. So this is all in light. And it gets a little bit, as we go back, we're going to make a color change in the back part of the, Okay, so also what I say is that this first lay-in, and Hawthorne talks about this, is your most important part of this. You want to get this accurate. And something, you know, I'm overstating everything. I can, like what I say is, I can always tame a stallion. It's hard to bring a dead horse back to life. So I'm trying to paint a stallion here that can be modified. Okay, so I'm going to just put a cooler green here, and there's the shadow note. And then I can see part of the house back there in light. So I want to indicate that. And then I'm going to put the shadow from the bush here. There's a shadow here. Then there's a shadow here. Then I see this other bush here. See part of the house here. Okay, so now I'm going to put this other, there's another bush here that's lighter, a little bit lighter than the grass. Might be a little bit darker. And then there's a shadow here. Okay, but see how simple that is? Let me just go back and forth. So now I really have a handle on what's in light, what's in shadow. And then that even this this chimney is a light and a shadow. So I want to make sure that I get that so it's really in light. So it stays in with the light planes. Okay. So now we're going to move to, I'm just going to bring this over here. Okay. So there's another, okay, so I think that's a good color for the trees in the background. He's got a dark color, so it might be a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit lighter than the foreground, but that's fine. So I'll just put that in. And now this looks like a very intense color, which I can, you know, modify. But when I'm looking at trees, I try to think about them as light and shadow. Then there's other trees here. Okay, so I'm looking at all these trees. So these dark ones are going to be one big color note, which he has. And then there's a background color. There's a background, some background trees there that are in light, but they're darker. I'm just looking for a, I'm going to just put them back here a little bit. I'm going to add some green to them later on, but I want them to stay back there. Okay. And then there's, I'm looking at this in relationship to this. So maybe I'll make these, the trees in the foreground, maybe a little bit light, like warmer. Okay, so here is part of the top of the tree. I'm trying to think about the trees as light and shadow notes. So there's the light part, and then the shadow part. So then there's a shadow here. Okay, so I'm just thinking about it, and there's probably a little bit of shadow here. Okay, and then I'll put in the trunks later on. But okay, so now I'm going to go to the back part, and that roof is in light. So I'm just going to make it a little bit lighter so it stays in the light plane. It's a dark light. Okay, then we have that back there is a little bit yellower. A little bit yellower than the other. So I'm going to make this yellower. And then I'm going to go to the shadow note, which is a little bit, actually, I could put a green in there. No, I think I can put this in. Okay, so I'm just going to make this a shadow note. And there's the yellow, you know, on the house. Okay. So I'm going to just put this whole thing yellow. Okay. So now there's something back there, like a porch back there. So I'm going to also think about that as in light and shadow. Okay, so there's probably, this is in shadow here. And I think there you can see part of the roof or the bottom of the porch, which is a shadow note. Then there's probably, you know, these posts, that's in shadow, that's in shadow. And then the rest of it is in light. I think this is in light. Probably this is in light. This is in light here. Then these are light. Okay, so and then this is part of this building back here that you can see through there. Okay, so now I'm going to continue with this tree in the foreground. So there's some leaves here, and then there's, and then I'm going to make this is in light here, and then I'm going to have a few like trunks coming. Okay, so now I'm going to let's see, I'm going to go to this tree in the back is going to be a little bit deeper in color. The light part is going to be a little bit deeper in color than this tree here. And there's a few, I'm going to make it maybe a little bit darker. And I can always add green to this later on. Okay. So now, let me get this. Okay, so now I'm going to do this bush in the foreground here. It's a little bit maybe cooler. And then, so I'm always thinking shadow and light, you know, so here's the shadow part of that bush. And you can redesign things, you know, as you're painting. You're not really a slave. And maybe we'll put some more warmth in that. And then there's the building. The building is casting, there's a shadow on the building from that tree here. I think these could be a little bit, okay. Then there's a little bit of white trim I can get into later on. Okay, so now the bushes back there, the grass in the distance is a little bit darker. And I'm going to mix this with some green. Gets a little bit, and then there's some foliage here that's a little bit darker here. And there's some green here. And probably then also, you know, I'm going to put a shadow next to the building here. Okay, so I'm always creating form and structure, always thinking about form and structure. By this I mean, you know, it's like the tree is going to cast a shadow. If it's next to a house, it's going to cast a shadow. So you're always thinking about how to create form. I'm going to make this a little bit darker. Okay. Now I'm going to go back there and make this grass back here just a little bit deeper because it goes back there. And then there's some, I'm going to just break this up a little bit here. And I'm going to put a little bit of dark like here. So it can, okay. So now this goes down here. So there's some bushes there that I see. This can maybe get a little bit cooler. Then there's some shadow parts over here. Maybe a shadow here. So I can bring these together so they're okay. So I'm almost done with the first lay-in. Okay, so now let's go. I'm going to toggle. Oh, and then the sky is a warm, which I'll eventually add some blue to, but I want to get it warm enough. This might be too light, but no, that's good. So I'll put that here, and I'll put that here. Okay, so that's the first lay-in. Okay, so let me toggle back and forth. So I've got my lights and my darks organized. So now I'm going to start adding some local color to different things. Maybe I'll put a window in here and there. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but I'll work on this a little bit to bring it more to finish. So I started with this purple, but now in the background I can start putting some local color into this green grass. Okay, and then I'm going to have a maybe a transitional color from the light part. I'm going to make this a little bit cooler back there. Maybe a little bit darker. So I compare it to the foreground. I'll keep that foreground color lighter. Okay, so now I'm going to add some green to this back here. I've got some warm, but now I'm going to add some green back here. Then I'm going to add some green foreground here. And there's some light. A few bushes here. I'm going to maybe add some warmth to this. bit of dark here. And then this here, I'm going to add some, break these shapes up a little bit. And this has some green in it too. And I think that's a little bit, let's see, a little bit oranger. These aren't quite this, it's a little bit oranger. I'm going to change the color of these. But see, I'm thinking of them as light and shadow. I'm not really getting into each individual flower. And then you can maybe come in with some color changes as it, you know, there's color changes as it goes from the light to the shadow area. And then I think this bush in the over here in the foreground is a little bit cooler. Okay, so now I'm gonna maybe put a window in the front here. I'm not gonna get into all the design. Well, I could. Okay. So it gets a little bit deeper. And warmer, like right here in these areas, right? Because there's less light getting into those areas. And like here, and then over here. Okay, so then if I put a window in, I'm going to put it in as a light and a shadow. Even the windows, even if they look dark. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so when I put that window in, I'm going to put in the dark. The window looks pretty dark over here. And even though, I mean, if you were looking at this, the window might look dark, but I'm going to put it, and then there's a shadow probably here. So I'm going to put that window in light. So it's darker. It's darker than the structure around it. But it's, and I'm going to maybe add some colors to this, but it's in light. This window is now in light and shadow. I'm going to put a little bit of green in it. Okay, so see how that now looks like it's in light and shadow? And then when I put the trim on, the trim is white. There's a white here. And then there's, here it's white, and it's like white here. There's probably a shadow underneath here. And then there's this is in light here. Makes it smaller. And this is in light. This is in light. And this is in light. But see how that now recedes? But that's important detail. That's how I break that window down into important detail. Okay, so now I'm going to put the window. Okay, so there's a window here. The shadow actually, oh, this is a little bit, I've drawn this a little bit too wide, but that's okay. I mean, this is just a demonstration. Okay, so let's say I'm going to put a window in the foreground. Okay, so it's the same principle. This is going to be dark. This is going to be dark. And then you're going to have, this is going to be a light. Then you're going to have the white and shadow and light. Then you're going to have this in light, light, and light. Okay, so now the door, that's all in shadow back there, and it's pretty dark. So we're going to put the door in. Here's a door. There's a window here. And and then you've got your white. That's going to be a little bit darker because it's in, you want to keep it back here. So I'm going to make that a little bit darker than the trim in the foreground. So there's the trim there, and it's staying in that shadow part. There's a little bit of the window here. Right here, there's a little bit of the window. Okay, so let's look at this. See how I'm starting to model the form? And I think the background, let's see. I think that yellow back there is popping out. So I'm going to come in and make this a little bit, less yellow. I'm going to mute the colors a little bit back here so that stays back there. Okay, so now I'm going to add some blue to the sky so that pink doesn't pop out. I'm going to add the same value. And I'm going to make these a little bit lighter here. Okay, so let's see, there's some shadow. I'm just going to put something back here to kind of stop your eye back here. I don't know what's back there, but there is a porch back there too, but I'm not going to get into that detail. But anyway, I think I'm going to stop with this. This gives you an indication of that first lay-in, how important that is. And, you know, you can, so you go from the general to the more specific. And as you develop it, you still, even when you're putting details down, you still keep those bigger notes. You don't lose that initial relationship of the see how the house separates from everything in the around it. So that's important. You want to you have a color for the house, a shadow and a light, and then you have a color for the grass and the trees around it. I'm just going to make this go up a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to go back and forth again. And then I'm going to stop the share. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll try to do something the 1st of January after the 1st of the year. So have a great holiday, and go to my YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube, and I will see you. Also, you can go to my website and see other paintings, my Facebook account, and hope to see everybody in 2022. So have a great holiday.